Spider-Man No Way Home. The review is here. The long-awaited by 10 people review has finally reared its head. Before we hop into it, just a couple really quick things. One, we are not going to be talking spoilers for the first X amount of minutes of this video. I think at least 10.
Is that an X-Men reference?
No, it's not.
Are you confirming they're in the MCU?
Is that a JoJo reference? No, this is going to be about probably 10 minutes of no spoilers, but we will tell you when we switch to spoilers. So you have warning if for some reason you're watching this and haven't seen the movie yet, that's totally fine. And also, we have a couple new things going on. For a little while, we've been doing the Let's Play channel. That's been really ramping up, which is also here on YouTube. We have the link to that in the description down below, where we hope you'll come hang out with us. And we also did recently start a Rumble account where we're uploading videos along with all of our social media stuff and a thriving Discord in that description. So I hope to see you over there on pretty much all of that. But
you also forgot your new Grindr account.
No, don't tell them about that.
Sorry.
Don't tell them about that. That's for discreet fan meetups.
Sorry.
Discreet fan meetups. I don't want like a big scandal on my hands. But so here's the thing with this movie. No spoilers, just talking about.
Well, I would like to say one spoiler here. He found a way home.
Oh, okay.
So
it's all about the bus fare.
Yes.
25 cents
yes,
short.
He did find it.
I love this movie. I will say that for you, and not to like speak for you, but to offer just kind of a different take here, this is probably your favorite MCU movie, and it's certainly up there with mine.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is very hard to judge for me because without saying certain things, we are so far in the MCU that it's like a TV show. You need to have seen the stuff beforehand.
Right.
You can't really go into these movies at this point with no background. And I understand that that's a turnoff to some people. Obviously not that many, because these make like $1 billion a piece.
Right.
But it makes it hard to judge it as a movie versus like a TV episode. But I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that you have to take into account this deep into the MCU, is that there is a rich history here. And this movie certainly pays that off.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, I think this probably was my favorite MCU movie. If it's not this, it's Winter Soldier. I still love that movie.
I like how we have like the same two.
Is this your second favorite MCU movie?
It's like my favorite is between this and Winter Soldier.
Okay.
But
so that's mine too.
Yeah, but like I gotta be honest with you, you know, like I probably Iron Man is up there too, but it's not my favorite.
Like the original Iron Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, up there is like Endgame and Infinity War. I love both those movies.
And Civil War.
Yeah, Civil War is great.
When it comes to MCU, we pretty much have the same take in a lot of ways, but I think we do have some different taste on certain things that we'll certainly get into in spoilers.
Right.
But what did you think overall? I mean, like, to me, I love this. This did fulfill my expectations. And people said, don't go into it with expectations. You know, you should go into it with like nothing at all. And
right.
I get that, but I don't like going into stuff just like thinking the bare minimum. Like, oh, I hope this is better than like Transformers Age of Extinction or something.
Well, it's hard to beat that.
I don't go into movies trying to set the bar as low as possible. I go in however excited I am. And I try not to overhype myself. But for me with this movie, I avoided social media. I didn't see spoilers, really. Some asshole posted like one scene, so I knew one character that would be in this that we'll talk about. That's it. And it didn't bother me because I already knew.
Right.
But what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I think in terms of it being a third Holland Spider-Man movie, I thought it was great. Like, it perfectly went along with his story. It basically continued. Actually, it started with Far From Home, like the ending of Far From Home. So it basically just continued that movie. I thought it was a great third movie to his trilogy. I don't know if we'll get more like Tom Holland specific Spider-Man movies in the future. I don't know. If this is the last time we really see Tom Holland Spider-Man in like his own movie, I loved it. And I thought it was a great ending to like the 3 Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, which again, like you mentioned earlier, aren't necessarily sequels to each other,
but I changed my mind a little. I changed my mind a little on that because I think that with this
one kind of was a sequel to Far From Home.
Tom Holland's trilogy might be the most connected trilogy in this universe outside of maybe Iron Man. You know, because like I think that with these movies, it's hard because things take place in between them. And with Homecoming to Far From Home, there was a lot of stuff in between that happened with Thanos and everything. And my issue with Far From Home is I love the movie, but it suffers from needing to be an epilogue to Endgame.
Right.
And that doesn't make it bad. It just means that it has a lot to address. It
Right.
almost had to address more in terms of the universe it was in than Spider-Man. And it seems to me like the direction of this movie is trying to go more in terms of, yes, Spider-Man exists in this universe, but we've heard fans. We know that there's things you maybe don't like about that, or things that you want to see him do as Spider-Man that are going to be different and maybe more like the comics, and we want to sort of push in that direction. That's what it seems. I'm trying to dance around things.
Right.
But it seems to me like that's what this movie is ultimately an answer to fan critique in a way, while continuing his story in an organic way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I thought it did it very well.
Yeah.
Personally. It's kind of tough to like talk about this movie while not including spoilers.
Well, we're going to wrap that section up in just a couple minutes here to just kind of move on. But I will say that I'm not disappointed at all by this movie. There are certainly things with every movie. Every single movie, I think we both have this, where we watch it and we're like, okay, if I was the director, I would maybe like add in a minute here or change this, or maybe even swap a joke that one of us doesn't find funny or something like that.
Yeah, have like a Ned and Spider-Man kissing scene.
Right. I just need I need Flash Thompson
to flash you?
No. I need Flash Thompson and Peter Parker to get together so he could be like, this is why I called you Penis Parker. You know, like have like a real accepting scene there. But
yeah, nice spoilers there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on the spoiler section here.
I love the movie overall. It's certainly one of my favorite Spider-Man movies. Does it need the MCU in a way to be enjoyed as much as it is? Yes, but we're at the point where you could say that about every single MCU movie.
Right.
Unless they do a prequel or something set on our planet like Guardians, you need that background. If that's not for you, I get it, but that's the way these movies are now, which would probably mean most superhero movies aren't for you, except for something like The Batman, which is just on its own.
Right.
So I guess I'm just, without droning on here, I'm saying I understand that criticism with people who are like, I'm just a fan of Spider-Man, I just want to watch Spider-Man. Yes, these are now integral to the MCU, and that's different than the things we saw in the past with those Sony movies and stuff, and different is sometimes not your cup of tea.
Right.
But in terms of its writing and everything, there's really nothing here that disappointed me. In one way, which I'll get to, I do think that Spider-Man fans who have never seen MCU movies, if they just showed up to Tom Holland movies, could still enjoy a lot of things in this movie.
Yeah.
I think that it would be one of those things where you wouldn't get nearly as much out of it, but I think that they were able to do a good job building on the history of this Spider-Man and who he is, more than just the MCU. I think this is probably the best Tom Holland movie in terms of building off of not Tony Stark and not Captain America and not the Avengers and not Thanos and the Snap and all that crap that I like, but building off of Tom Holland and the events he went through in his movies.
Right.
So with that said, I think we can kind of jump into spoilers. I'm going to give you a good 5 seconds to get out of here if you don't want to hear any spoilers.
I'm going to take a sip of my pop.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you, how's your day been? How you been? Did you have a good day?
My day has been great.
Good, we saw the movie today.
Yeah, you know, yesterday I bought something out of the vending machine at work, and 2 bags of chips came out instead of 1.
Did it really?
It made my entire day.
Now that's a good sign. The other day I opened a fortune cookie and I got no fortune, so I'm thinking I might be dying pretty soon.
Can I have your Funkos?
Yeah, we got to get this out here.
Okay, cool.
So spoilers. First off, everybody who told me that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were not going to be in this and gave me a hard time, and I'm talking specifically the people here who were assholes about this, who said that no, none of those leaks are true, those leaks that people said, well, you should just avoid them when they were plastered all over every piece of social media. Dude, your grandma was getting freaking spam emails about Tobey Maguire leaked, urinal cup pictures on set, going to the bathroom on the set of No Way Home. They were getting like these pictures of Andrew Garfield holding a bar and all these different things where people analyzed the shot of Sandman and Lizard and Electro going after Tom. And these people, they called names, they attacked other fans, social media, YouTube comments, etc., just hurling stones in a glass house. Fuck you.
Jeez. Wow.
like just straight up. Like, I got so much shit for that. I'm not talking people who were like, hey man, you might want to temper your expectations a little bit. No, I'm talking like people that were like busting my balls. Like, you don't know they're gonna be in here. You have no idea. Like all this shit for it, like on social media and YouTube and stuff. Like all these Spidey fans like just ramming their web fluid down my throat. Go outside, shut up. Because they were here, and I can't tell you. I know it's conceited a little bit. Like I had a little bit of a Spider-Man
tingle,
a little bit of a Spider-Man 3 moment after he thought he killed Sandman. Like, good riddance. That was me to those people,
right?
Who just straight up gave me such a hard time about that, because I remember when I talked about this, and I talked about the marketing for this movie, and I said, I don't like the marketing for this movie. These are fun trailers, but like, you don't need to pretend that they're not going to be here. We all know. And there were some people that were like just so down on their knees for Sony, like just deep, that they were like, oh, no, you don't know, you have no idea at all. Those leaks could all be fake. They're all fake. You have no clue. Dude, it was all true. Everything. Every single bit of the leaks, true. Even the shot of Andrew holding the bar, true. That was in the movie.
Yep.
Like, you look so stupid now. It all ended up being true, and what was the point of all of that negativity and anger about it? I mean, you just ended up looking like a jerk, and now everybody's laughing at you. I've seen people go through on Twitter specifically and quote retweet just the living daylights out of people that were being mean about this and just putting them on blast. People look so dumb now, and there was no point. Whether you believed those leaks or not, there was never a reason for it to get so angry. And now these people just look like losers who don't know what they're talking about and won't be taken seriously by others going forward.
Well, and I guess my thing is, I don't know how dumb you have to be to not know that they were in this movie.
Or at least not expect
right.
it.
And the thing is, like, the MCU did like the worst job of marketing I've ever seen with these movies. You have Tom Holland, who cannot keep a secret on anything for his life. And you have Andrew Garfield, who is the worst liar I've ever seen in my entire lifetime.
The biggest smile.
Yeah, like every time he's asked anything about this movie, he'd give like some big smile and be like, nope, I'm not in that. It's like, yeah, you are. Like, you suck at lying.
And he's been doing interviews, like he did the answering the internet's questions and stuff like that. It's like, of course.
And and also with like Tobey Maguire, he like just stayed away from the limelight in this.
Completely.
Yes, and I think in one sense he was smart just to kind of be like, I'm sticking out of this. I probably can't lie.
Right.
But in the other sense, that kind of made it look more guilty even. Because it's like he's just refusing to even give one opinion or the other.
He wouldn't give a single interview.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. And plus also with like the trailer leak too, with like the lizard like randomly having like a Michael J. Fox moment with his neck.
Oh yeah,
and it's like,
or like how they had the scene, and I even showed a picture of it with like circles and arrows and shit, where you had Lizard jumping at no one.
Yeah, Lizard, and then Tom Holland was jumping on like Sandman, and then Electro was like shooting off someone else.
Not to mention, Tom Holland would be murdered if he fought the entire Sinister Six by himself.
He got murdered at the beginning.
Yeah,
and he just fought Green Goblin. Not the beginning, but I meant at the beginning when they appeared.
And I already hear the comment, like, well, Spider-Man's fought the whole Sinister Six in one. Yes, an experienced Spider-Man has done that. Mm-hmm. Usually after getting his ass kicked.
Right.
Usually after almost dying. But he has an issue with those individual villains, and this is a kid. This is a teenage
He's
Spider-Man.
Not even in college yet.
You know, that's something even Doctor Strange points out, is like, you know, sometimes I forget you're still a child. He is. He's a kid. He's not fully, I guess this movie's sort of about him becoming a man.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and accepting that responsibility for what he does and deciding to stop messing up people's lives, which is really sad but interesting. I love how the movie starts. They start out right after right after No Way Home, or
Far From Home.
Far From Home. They're all way too similar in name. And for me at first, I was like, man, I hope that this is good, because it was such a weird transition, since it literally starts the second Far From Home ended.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh man, I really hope they can pull this in. And there was not a moment of the movie where I was like, move on.
Right.
Or like, man, I don't like this, or whatever. I didn't feel like that at all. And I think that this movie progressed really fluidly. It kind of goes through Peter's story, and then it ties in, Doctor Strange, and it does a really good job with that. Benedict Cumberbatch was very good in this movie for the parts he was in, but he didn't steal the show.
Right.
Which was something I was a little worried about with like how much they marketed off of him, was like, how much is he in this movie? I think that they were able to balance who was in this movie incredibly well.
Right.
And I think that that's what I'm most impressed by, is the inclusion of all these villains. You have Goblin, you have obviously Sandman, you have Electro, you have
Lizard.
Doc Ock and Lizard. Yeah, and how they balance them. Certainly some people show up less than others, like Lizard and probably Sandman are the least important.
The least too important.
But they still matter.
Right.
And it was still fun to see them. And to see moments of things that we suspected and knew from previous movies. Like, for example, I'm not saying this makes the movie good, but I think it's intelligently written, where you have things like Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn purposely pulls himself out of the Green Goblin persona and tries to get help. But that persona is always like lurking in the back of his head and eventually takes over again. Stuff like that. I really like it, because this movie also points out in a lot of ways something that I think the original Spider-Man movies lost sight of in some ways, which was that almost every villain that he fought was a victim of circumstance and of their own choices.
You're talking the Toby characters, right?
No, I'm talking all of them.
Oh, okay.
Because Lizard, for even example, in Andrews, he was a victim of what was happening at Oscorp, the corruption, and trying to actually help people and ending up screwing up himself in his own life.
Yeah, and Electro is a victim of ugly teeth.
Bad dentistry. He was a victim, obviously, again, of Oscorp and how he was treated, and he had mental health issues, like really bad. When I rewatched that movie the other day, I didn't remember how bad his mental health issues were. He was talking to himself. He had voices in his head. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. Like, these were all severely damaged individuals. And I think that Peter always did try to help them in every movie. Every version of Peter did. But it hit a point where he just couldn't. He either didn't have the tech, he didn't have the time, or there was nothing he could do. And this movie is kind of like, what if there was time? You know? Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, he's been around for years, probably decades at this point in that universe, and he's thought about it. It's interesting to hear he thought about what he could have done with more time, with like an anti-serum to the Goblin formula and stuff like that. Yeah. But there was nothing he could do because he was already dead. But he thought about that. And I think that the writing in this movie really impresses me with how detailed it is as a payoff to every Spider-Man movie that's been made for the last few decades.
Yeah, and I think kind of going off that was one of my favorite aspects about it too, was that it didn't just serve as a sequel to Far From Home for Tom Holland's Spider-Man and Tom Holland's Spider-Man's universe storyline. It served as a sequel to all these other characters as well. Like, for example, Green Goblin, like you said, he didn't... I don't know what happened to him when he went back. We don't know any of that stuff, but he was pulled out of that universe before he died. So he got his chance of redemption, if you will, in this movie. Same with the Lizard. Oh, that was the other thing I liked too, is that they always had like cool moments between like the other Spider-Men. Like, they got their chance of redemption with their villains
and with their failures. Like,
yeah, you had Andrew Garfield saving MJ.
Yeah,
and he got to save her instead of not being able to save Gwen Stacy, and
he started crying.
Yeah,
it was actually
I actually cried at that point.
I teared up a tiny bit. It was really well written. Yeah, like the way they did that.
And then you had like Tobey Maguire have like a moment with Sandman, and I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool, and like Andrew Garfield got to save the Lizard and whatnot. So I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool because it was like all these other characters in those movies. Like, for example, Doc Ock. it's very clear that Doc Ock was obviously corrupted by his own octopus legs, whatever, I don't know, whatever they're
His
called.
mechanical arms.
Yeah. He was corrupted by it, but then in this movie, he was able to be cured from that when he didn't in the original, and it ended up killing him. So I thought it was kind of cool that these characters, instead of just dying, they actually got their chance at redemption, because none of these characters really are villains to me. Like, I don't think of like Green Goblin as like he is, but to me he's a guy who's confused and hurt and in pain, and this thing took over his life.
Right, they are all, like I said, they're all victims.
Yes.
They're still villains, but they're all tragic villains.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that those Spider-Man movies, they did them a lot better than the MCU Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
Because, like, I felt bad for Vulture. I did feel bad for him, but I didn't feel bad at all for Mysterio.
No.
Like, Mysterio was not a victim. He was just a dick.
Yeah.
And, like, Vulture, there were other things he could have done, you know, to be successful.
Yeah.
Yes, he got screwed over, and yes, it was unfair. But instead of moving on from it, he decided to take it out on everyone else and get himself ahead in life. And he didn't stop at being successful. The guy was ultra wealthy. Like, he had like, like a Beverly Hills mansion type setup in New York. And, if you know housing there and stuff, not to get
expensive.
into like unnecessary details, but like that man was wealthy. Okay.
Right.
He didn't stop at just being successful. And what I'm saying with that is I never got that impression from the villains in the older Spider-Man movies. They didn't come off like super greedy bastards who like really hated everyone around them and wanted everyone to suffer and just cared about themselves. They came off as people who were hurt.
Right.
I think this movie does such a fantastic job of presenting them in that way while also showing them as capable of really evil stuff. Like, Electro's mind is very clearly warped by his mental illness plus the power he now has. There's historical examples of that too. You give a nobody who's been kicked around their whole life a ton of power, and they're going to start kicking people around.
Right.
Because it's their turn.
Yeah, the Roman Emperor Domitian was a good example of that. Anyways.
And there's a lot of examples of that too. I mean, we even have examples of that today. And that's how even people groups are that way in countries. You see like a country, if you have a country that's the butt end of being treated terribly for 3 decades, and they get nuclear weapons or something, now it's their turn to treat everyone terribly. Not to be equal, but to be worse.
Right.
And you kind of see like that anger in Electro of like, I was powerless, now I'm a god.
Yeah.
And you should all feel what I felt. And you see it with Ock, where it's like he's convinced himself so much that his work is worth sacrificing people's lives. And you see that in every character. It's really interesting because they're simultaneously able to show the damage to those characters while also showing that the history of those universes continued after them.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting too with Toby and Andrew coming in, and you get kind of caught up on their universe in vague ways, talking about the fact that Toby and MJ made it work, or talking about the fact that Andrew got angry over time after the Amazing Spider-Man 2
And committed murder.
Probably.
He had like John Walker moments.
They didn't say he killed anyone, but the thing,
it's pretty implied.
If you know Spider-Man, and he said he stopped pulling his punches, he probably killed some people.
Yep.
There was a point where he lost sight of that hope. And it's interesting to me to see, I guess, how these universes played out, and how in some ways Goblin's plan in that universe worked, where he said, now I'm going to take your hope from you.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, 5 months later, Andrew tried to come back as Spider-Man, and he's still Spider-Man now, but like, he's almost a darker version of it. And to kind of see how these characters grew over time and who they are now, it just makes me want to see another movie for both of them. Like, where you wrap up the storyline after this for Toby and Andrew.
Yep. Yeah, to me, going back a little bit, but the Electro line where he basically, after he lost his powers, I felt really bad for him. Where he basically told Andrew, like, you still have your Spider-Man thing. I don't have anything anymore. And I felt bad because I'm like, this guy really was like a nobody.
Yeah.
And like, he finally got his chance to like make his mark on the world, and then was taken from him.
But also, he used his chance to...
Yes, he used a chance for evil. So in that sense, I didn't feel bad for him, but I did feel bad for him because I get it.
Right.
So...
I think you kind of get every character in this movie.
Yeah, I get all of them.
I think that's why I liked it so much. And that's also why I liked the old Spider-Man movies so much. Like, I do still get the newer villains like Vulture and Mysterio. I understand them, but they're less sympathetic because they are so selfish.
Right.
Whereas those other characters, you see the pain that they went through, and it's interesting to see this Spider-Man make that his responsibility to fix. It's probably the most Spider-Man thing he's done.
Yep.
In this continuity, is taking it upon himself to fix
other continuities villains.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and what it ends up costing him too. What did you think about Aunt May's death?
I was pretty sad by that, actually.
Yeah, me too. Because Marissa Tomei is hot, or because you like Aunt May?
Both.
Okay.
But I also was sad because they had her like stand up, so I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, it's fine. And then she like died, and it was like, really? Like, yeah. Like, you made me think like, oh, hey, she's good, and then she wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. I was sad by that, but at the same time, I wasn't, because her death kind of meant Tom Holland, Spider-Man, growing as a person. And also I don't want to say she's a minor character, but she kind of is. So to me, it wasn't like, oh no, you know.
Is this your Sally Fields moment? You can't put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag? Remember when she said that about playing Aunt May? That she hated it? I did. This is like your Aunt May takedown moment.
It is.
No, you're right, though. This movie seems like it's all about making Spider-Man more independent. Yeah. I think that this movie is probably the most obvious answer to criticism for the MCU that they've ever made.
Right.
It seems like everything that people have talked about, like, oh, I don't want Spider-Man to have Stark tech anymore. He doesn't. I actually liked that just fine, but I'm also fine with him not having it. I don't really care either way, but like by the end of the story, that's written out. Or things like, well, I don't like the end of Far From Home. Spider-Man should have a secret identity. Well, now he does. You know, nobody knows anymore. You know, even things like, I don't want Spider-Man just connected to Tony Stark. Well,
now he's not.
Now he's not. There you go. But he also...
You happy now?
He also is, though. This is something...
To him, he is.
This is something you and I argued about slightly, or maybe disagreed on slightly. Nate thinks that if you remove that memory from every other character, that it doesn't have as much impact, which I understand. I think that because it still has so much impact to him and he lived those experiences, and we know about them, that it still happened and still matters.
Yeah.
I don't think either of us thinks it doesn't matter at all, but I think we just think it matters to different levels. I think part of it, though, is that the MCU has gotten everyone, including you and me, so used to, like, remember the thing. You know, where every movie they talk about something else that happened, where it in a way makes your mind think that that thing had more impact, but also in real life, it's not like every conversation starts with like, remember this tragedy, or like, remember 9/11, or remember, you know, this thing that happened. Like, those things happened, and people know about them, but like, they don't always come up. And so to me, I think that it's a difficult line to cross, because you have a universe that wants to build off of itself and previous entries, but also, if that's all you do with it is remember the last movie and wait for the next movie, then the movie you're on doesn't matter. And I think they did a very good job of making this movie matter, and while still tying it in. So it's such a hard thing to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of see both sides. To me, it's kind of more disappointing in the sense of we were just starting to see Peter and MJ getting together. We were just starting to see the guy in the chair growing as like a nice 3-team up here. I'm not going to include your joke.
He even got a new cape in this. It was great. Yeah. It was great. But Doc is back.
Yes. I don't know. And that to me is what's disappointing. Tom Holland Spider-Man went through this whole entire big life-changing story in Infinity War and Endgame with all these other Avengers characters. And to me, it's kind of disappointing that next time he sees Thor, next time he sees Falcon, next time he sees Bucky, all these characters, they're not going to know who he is. And it's kind of like, yeah, but you guys went through all this stuff together. And it's just, I don't know. To me, yeah, it matters to Peter Parker, but it doesn't matter to anyone else. And to me, that's kind of disappointing.
And while I understand that, I don't think he had that deep of relationships with anybody other than Tony Stark, his aunt, and his two friends.
He had a pretty deep relationship with Captain Marvel. Remember when she said, "Hi, Peter Parker?
Yes.
You got something for me?"
You're getting to what I'm saying, which is that most of his interactions with those characters were very brief.
Yeah.
And there is an implication that they still remember Spider-Man because...
But not Peter.
But I don't understand how that works because Happy Hogan at the end does remember Spider-Man and straight up says that he remembers Spider-Man and that May had a connection to Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't remember that Peter Parker is Spider-Man and they don't remember Peter Parker at all.
Yeah, so that to me, it's like, well, then does Zendaya remember, or MJ, sorry, I don't know why I keep using the actress name, but does...
Because she's hot.
Does MJ remember that she dated Spider-Man?
Seems like she doesn't, but I don't know.
But that doesn't make sense, because then how come Happy Hogan remembers that Spider-Man had a connection to Aunt May?
Well, and then here's my other question. When you send all those villains back, are you creating new timelines? Like I said, like the Pym particle thing, are you creating 3 new timelines per Spider-Man where like that villain survived and others didn't, or that villain survived but the one before him didn't? Like when Ock goes back, is Goblin still dead before him in his timeline, but when Norman goes back, that's a different timeline? Or I like to think of it as they all just got dropped off later on in the timeline with Toby or with Andrew. Because I think
like screwing.
Yeah, exactly. Why'd you go right there in your head? Nobody made a joke or anything that pointed there.
Maybe I've already drawn Rule 34 of this.
Maybe we should stop this so you can show me your organic web fluid. Okay. That was another thing I love in this movie is how those Spider-Men play off of each other. Things like the jokes about Toby's organic web fluid.
Yeah.
Or things about...
You're amazing.
Yeah, you're amazing to the Amazing Spider-Man.
Or like the best line in the whole movie when Andrew Garfield told Toby, "So you're going to go into battle dressed as the cool youth pastor, or do you got your suit?"
I loved it. I loved everything. Mm-hmm. You know, to me, this felt... And that's why I say it's hard, because I know at the beginning of this, I said something along the lines of, if you're not a fan of the MCU connections, maybe you won't like this movie as much. And I still stand by that, but I also do think that this movie is more like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate of Spider-Man movies.
Right.
And hear me out. I know you know what I mean, but to them... It is like the culmination of, yes, there will probably be more after this, of some kind, but this is, in a way, tying up the things you wanted to see from every previous game.
Right.
Like for Smash Bros, where it's like, you asked for that character, now they're here, or you wanted this thing, now that's here, and we put these stages in, too, so it's the compilation.
Right.
This is like the ultimate epilogue to every Spider-Man mainstream movie that's been made since 2000.
Yep.
Where it's almost the sequel to Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. It's a sequel to Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, and it's a sequel to Homecoming Far From Home as well. And the MCU stuff before that, like Infinity War, Endgame, etc. But it's almost more of a sequel to previous Spider-Man movies. And I noticed that a lot watching this movie, is that it references previous Spider-Man movies more than it references events of the MCU.
Yeah.
It almost seems like this was geared... In a way, I'm not sure why I had a weird spit swallowing moment there. But it's almost like this movie was geared to fans of the MCU, but even more to people like, hey, listen, we know that you are now 35 or 40 and you have your family and you were, 20 or 18 or something when the first Spider-Man came out or whatever. I'm not doing the math here. And we know that you're kind of moved on and maybe you're not super into the MCU and all this stuff, but you remember Toby. That was your childhood. That's here. Or we know that you were near the end of high school when you saw Amazing Spider-Man, like us. And that mattered a lot to you when those movies came out, and they affected you in some way. That matters here.
Right.
It almost seems like this was the ultimate, bridging of the gap of every live-action Spider-Man fandom. I'm sure they will somehow find a way to be at each other's throats still.
Right.
But to see those three together, all mattering and all... having a part in this, and not just in the last 10 minutes. I would say probably, the last hour or 45 minutes?
I would say so. It was kind of like a dream come true.
Yes. It's like the ultimate pat on the back from like Marvel and Sony of like, hey, listen, we know that you watched our movies before. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is kind of a love letter send off to you. Your critiques of the new movies, your loves of the old movies, and your loves of the new movies. They're all here and all addressed.
Yeah.
And while you're not going to leave with every single thing you want, I think you leave with enough of it that you're happy. I don't know how someone who's seen every Spider-Man movie before this could leave the theater and be unhappy with it.
Spider-Man fans will find a way.
I did see some people saying it was underwhelming.
I don't know how.
Well, and here's the issue I will say. If that is true, I think part of that is on Sony and Marvel, which is that they refused to confirm or deny really anything with this movie and be super vague with its marketing to the point where some people got tired of it.
Yep.
And that's something I was saying like a month or two ago. It's something people got mad at me for, but it's something that we are seeing now with certain people, where there are some people who just didn't like that direction. Then there's people like me who didn't like that marketing direction, but still went in knowing relatively nothing and really enjoyed it, except that I did guess most of the things that happened.
Right.
But I was fine with that.
Yeah, I was even happy they included Electro's theme. It was
3 notes.
It was literally 3 notes, but those 3 notes were incredible.
Yeah.
And I was happy. But yeah, I don't know. I think this movie was kind of like you said, the perfect culmination of everything Spider-Man related. To be honest, it was kind of everything I wanted it to be. My biggest fear going into this movie was Andrew and Tobey weren't going to be in it. And it was just going to be horrible.
I didn't even fear that anymore because of all those leaks and all that stuff.
I know, with all that stuff, I still had this because...
Were you leaving those mean comments?
because movie companies, game companies, Funko companies, whatever you want to say, they pull this crap all the time. We're like, they have all, like, they could have the coolest thing in the universe, and it's so disappointing.
Oh, Ralph Boner, dude.
Yes.
That's the biggest example.
And that's why to me, with all these leaks, I still was kind of like, I don't know. I think so. It seems like they are, but I can also see Marvel just pulling like another one of those dumb Rian Johnson twists where they're like, yeah, they're not in it. You like our marketing? It's like, no.
Yeah, like a subverting expectations equals good story. That
like, no, we don't like this. But I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah,
and I left in was kind of like, that was everything I wanted.
Yeah, and you know, I think that the way they're addressing the multiverse, now I could be wrong. I had to burp. I could be wrong on this. All right, so the way that I understand it is it seems like they're kind of going the route of, hey, listen, the Marvel stuff that you've seen, the multiverse is huge and it probably happened.
So that means Nicolas Cage can be in this universe.
I don't think he's going to be, but
I want him.
But jokes aside, I do think that that's kind of what they're getting at. Yeah. I don't know if you do. But it seems to me like that's kind of the idea. Like, yes, there was an X-Men universe out there, and yes, there was a universe out there with just Spider-Man and Doctor Strange is referenced one time with like Tobey, and that's probably superheroes are rare in that universe. Or yes, there's a universe with Andrew and where Gwen died and all this stuff. I think that that's a really good way to handle it because it opens up the potential of crossing those things over and paying off that fandom from those old things in the future,
but also leave it in the sense that you don't have to.
Right, and those things can still be enjoyed on their own. Like, you can enjoy Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 without seeing this movie.
Right.
You don't need it. It's like sort of an epilogue to Andrew and to Tobey for his 1 through 3, but you don't need it. Their stories were good enough as is, and you could leave with that. It simultaneously managed to pay off and reward fans of those things for having watched them, while also not punish people who aren't super into this new continuity who maybe won't see this movie.
Right.
It's not like this was integral where it's like there was this integral character building moment that like if you didn't see it, you don't know Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man.
Right.
That didn't happen either. And I think that also could have been really annoying. The balance they found in this movie was amazing. I think we're getting a little long here. Downstairs, not in the review. But one last thing I want to talk about for me, and then I want to see if you have anything else.
I have one more thing I wanted to mention.
One last thing for me that really impressed me was the suit at the end.
Yes.
The way that they play this off without telling you, and I understand someone will say, headcanon, but like the way they play this off without telling you is essentially that Spider-Man learned from the mistakes and life experiences of the other two Spider-Man that he met, and he will certainly still make his own mistakes, and he will certainly still live his own life, but they inspired him in a way. In some ways good, in some ways bad.
Yeah.
You know, finding out that Andrew lost Gwen seems to have inspired or given Peter the idea that MJ's better off without him.
Yeah.
Which I think is sad because in a lot of ways she's not. You know, she was not happy without him. And it does seem like their relationship, for as brief as it was like the first time in years that character was happy and felt alive in that writing. So in a way, that's not fair to her, but also that's kind of the lesson he walked away from is like, I don't want to get this girl I love killed.
Yeah.
But he also took positive aspects from them, like seeing Toby live a long life and seeing the suits that they had made themselves and things like that. And then at the end, he makes his own suit that is very clearly inspired by both Andrew and Toby's suits.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is really good. And that's why I think that this is kind of like, if it were to end Spider-Man, it would be the ultimate send-off. But to me, it also seems like a new beginning where you can continue from here. And to me, that history matters. And I get that that's disappointing to some people, and I respect that too. And I don't even fully disagree. But the way that they're able to be like, everything mattered, but he's going his own way now is really good. I really liked it.
Yeah, and I was disappointed, but I'm also excited. I should say that. Because like you said, it is kind of a new start. And it's a new start without Tony's tech suit. He made his own suit.
Right.
So now it's kind of like, well, this is his own Spider-Man, which I'm excited about.
It's almost him finally becoming an adult and standing on his own.
Right.
Like completely.
And finding his way home.
Yeah, finally, with that extra 25 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, the last thing the last couple things I wanted to say was, I think it's important to point out that the fourth movie has been confirmed. He doesn't pay his rent, and it's Spider-Man Homeless.
That would be epic.
The next thing I wanted to point out though was,
well, wait, you didn't talk about him post-pandemic before this, where they got to shoehorn in that pandemic.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Spider-Man Homebody, where he orders all of his groceries off of Amazon.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Cub Foods and other places.
I think it's very important to point that out, actually. The thing I wanted to say actually was kind of a negative I had about it. The Vulture was not in this movie.
Yeah, what was up with that?
It's weird because my thing is, you had all these other villains in the movie, which were amazing, but then you didn't have, like, Tom Holland's Spider-Man's own villain. Like, I get why Mysterio's not in the movie, he's dead. But you have
supposedly.
Right. But you literally have the Vulture, who exists still in this universe.
Yeah.
He is still living, he's still alive and well, and in the end credit scene of Homecoming, you have the Scorpion in prison, basically forming a team with him. And my thing is, yes, I understand then they'd have, like, what, 7 villains in this movie? That's a lot. I get it. But
they could have thrown in one. It would seem like they teased the Sinister Six, but there was only 5.
Yeah, it's
like a multiversal Sinister Six.
Why not at least the Vulture?
Yeah.
He already exists.
Because now you have all villains that are not directly connected to Tom.
Yes.
There wasn't a single villain directly connected to Tom, except that he's Spider-Man and so were they.
Right.
So
I don't know. To me, it was weird. And it's like, I don't know. I guess I loved all the other villains, but my thing was just, why not just put the Vulture in?
Okay, I have one nitpick then, fine. If we're going here, not with your complaint.
Okay.
I'm not saying yours is a complete nitpick, but I'm just saying it doesn't affect the quality of the movie, right? Mine doesn't either. Right. But the end credit scene with Eddie Brock was pointless.
That was kind of stupid.
So I get the idea that from both these two things, this is what reminded me of it, is both of those were end credit stingers or teases or whatever for new stuff.
Right.
I personally think this is an abomination.
Not the villain.
No, the villain. The villain.
Okay. Oh, okay.
An abomination type choice.
Okay.
Where it's like they tease Abomination at the end of Incredible Hulk, and then it's like, well, we forgot about him.
Right.
I don't know. He's in Shang-Chi. Where it's like, okay, all right, whatever. But it seems to me like both the Vulture and Scorpion tease, where now they will have forgotten that Peter Parker's Spider-Man because of that spell, right?
Yeah.
That tease never mattered. Never came to fruition like the Abomination one. And also the tease that I will say happened in Venom 2, where they tease about the multiverse with Venom. Seeing when he sings Venom and then he goes and sings Venom again in the shower, and then he goes out and he sees he sees Tom Holland on the TV while he's humming Venom. And it's like, oh, wait, no, what's going on here? And you see that crossover. I thought that they were kind of going into like a pair up where they would meet up. They even had him say like, oh, I better go to New York and see who the Spider-Man is, and then gets yanked out again. Right. So to me, this could be wrong, but my understanding is Venom Let There Be Carnage was done quite a while ago because of the pandemic, and that they waited on certain things and then they eventually pushed for a release and everything. It seems to me like the implication was Sony did not know if Venom 2 was going to be as successful as it was. And so they were kind of like to Marvel, hey, can we like put Venom in for like a movie or two and have a crossover, then we'll take him back? And they were like, oh yeah, people like Venom. It kind of seems like Marvel had the idea of like, those Venom movies are trash, but people like them. Right. We'll put them in. Right. We'll put them in for a couple movies, but like, we don't want those movies in our continuity, just your character for a few parts. Right. But then it seems like Sony was like, Venom 2 was way more successful than we thought. Can we have Venom back? I know we went back on it, but here, you can have a little piece of the symbiote. It seems like that was the discussion that happened behind the scenes, where they teased something. And it's weird because like Venom is one of the movies that came out closest to this movie. Yeah. Too. So it's almost like they have a stinger like, oh man, a Venom team up, and then immediately Venom's gone. Right. It's like, why? It's kind of stupid. There's certain things that I feel like the MCU and Sony and stuff have not planned super well. Now, personally, I would rather see that Venom show up in a Spider-Verse movie. I don't mean live action. I mean their animated ones. Like a Spider-Verse 2. Yes, or 3 or whatever, because I think they're going to make 14. I think they're going to make a few more of them. Right. And I would like to see that, where you pull him over into that universe, and now he has some knowledge of a Spider-Man existing. That kind of thing would be cool, to kind of use Venom to bridge the gap between these realities in a way. But if he never comes back to the MCU and never interacts with Tom now, it seems like that whole stinger was stupid. Yes. Why'd we even do that? Just so then the symbiote could be in that universe. Right. Which to me makes... If to me that's the Venom inclusion in this universe, to me it almost seems like they made those two movies just specifically to put that one symbiote Venom thing. 1 and 2. Yes. That one specific symbiote piece in the MCU. Well, let me correct you. Let me correct you here. They made those two movies to make money. That's why they're PG-13, but and that's why they backed out of any graphic aspect. But in terms of the MCU, right? And if you're only looking at it in the lens of the MCU, those two movies only exist to just give us that one piece of the symbiote. Right. Which is dumb. Yeah. So there are certain things like that I think are silly under scrutiny. Yeah. But I don't know. Overall, this is your favorite MCU movie. It's certainly one of mine. This to me feels like the ultimate superhero payoff movie. This is what I hope. And I'm not expecting it, but what I hope that The Flash will be for me with Michael Keaton. Yeah. Maybe it's ironic that I'm going in caring more about the Michael Keaton Batman being there, but this is what I want out of it, is respecting the history of that character. Right. I think that this makes up for a lot of disrespect of that history. Dr. Disrespect of that history. But like, I think that Sony, in a way, disrespected the history of the Raimi movies when they just straight up rebooted and never mentioned them again and basically told Sam Raimi to take a hike. And I think that they disrespected the history of the Andrew Garfield movies when they did the same thing to him. Yep. To me, this kind of seems like a mending of that bridge between every fandom for live-action Spider-Man and also with individual fans of those things too from the company to say like, hey, listen, we know that we didn't do the best with this. They're never going to say it, but it seems like that's kind of the implication, is like, we know we didn't do the best with this. Here's your payoff for having cared the whole time. Yeah. And I like that. It was just nice to see. Do you have anything else?
Not really.
Not really.
I just love this movie.
I do too. I love this movie too. I was very, very excited and very happy with what we got. Let us know in the comments down below if you made it this far, what you think. I'm very interested if you did. Tell me, have you ever had No Way Home? And if so, how did you get home?
It was scary.
That's always what I'm wondering. I did have No Way Home. One time I accidentally took the wrong bus from my college. And this is not a fake story. I ended up at a random Metro Transit bus stop, like an hour and a half from my house.
Jeez.
And I did not know where to go.
So you were far from home.
I was far from home. I had no way home, and I was almost homeless. But I did have a homecoming.
Okay, good.
Because I was able to talk to the bus, the one lady at the bus desk. She told me where to go. I got home. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Please be sure to check out everything in the description. As always, we hope to see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, leave a like, subscribe, and stay shway.